Greetings and welcome to Illinois in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. This week in Illinois in Focus, we'll discuss the ongoing debate in Illinois over the One Big Beautiful Bill that President Donald Trump signed into law on the 4th of July. We'll also discuss the ongoing war of words between Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Trump border czar Tom Homan over the city's sanctuary policies. All that and more when we return.
Teacher Lauren Johnson returned all the graded essays but one. He believed that one student was capable of more.
I don't believe taking the middle of the road is your philosophy. This time, write something you really believe.
The student wrote a new one about excellence. Instead of just grading an essay, Mr. Johnson changed a life. I am that student. I became a writer, and I wrote this to thank him.
Thank a teacher and pass it on from passiton.com.
Welcome back to Illinois in Focus. Joining me today is Illinois editor Greg Bishop. Greg, elected Democrats really don't like the big, beautiful bill in Illinois and around the country. From its reforms to Medicaid spending, to its energy initiatives, to its national schools choice scholarship credits, and more, Republicans say Democrats are fear-mongering. Where do you want to start?
That's a great question, Dan, because it's just such a large piece of legislation that President Donald Trump enacted on Independence Day, keeping our staff monitoring that busy on a holiday. But regardless, it's given us plenty to unpack all throughout the week, Dan, as we just look into little nooks and crannies of this very large bill. Now, everything about the spending obviously is important. It's $3 trillion, increases spending for Border Patrol, for border protection and security, and immigration and customs enforcement. But it also, on the taxing side, it has the no tax on tips. It has the no tax on overtime. It has a continuation and an extension in perpetuity of the 2017 Trump tax cuts. And that was a big thing that small businesses, Dan, had really been harping on since this time last year. They were putting out a full court press with organizations like the National Federation of Independent Business really working to get this 2017 tax extended, because they said if it wasn't going to be extended by the end of this calendar year of 2025, small businesses would have seen their taxes go up quite a bit. So that was an imperative piece of the legislation that passed and ultimately was enacted. But that's the spending and the taxing side of it. We can talk about the no tax on tips portion of this, because this is something that, in the debate and back and forth from the House to the Senate, the details ultimately did come out, but, those details are, it's just a temporary kind of no tax on tips. So, it gives, I guess, Congress a way to evaluate how that might have to change. But what's interesting, Dan, is how could that possibly be emulated in Illinois? Because Illinois also has taxes on tips. So you're not just paying federal taxes on your income, you're paying state income taxes as well. So will Illinois follow suit in that and try to replicate or emulate what the federal no tax on tips is, and implement that in Illinois as well, so it could give those in the service industry that tax relief? We'll see if that happens with legislators. They've got other things they're going to have to tackle as well, Dan. And Governor J.D. Pritzker, before the measure passed, he said he doesn't think that they're going to have to come back into legislative session for a special session to deal with anything from the big, beautiful bill. He says a lot of the things are actually going to be going into effect after the 2026 election. So we'll see how this ultimately impacts Illinois all the way down the line.
Governor Pritzker has railed against the bill. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has railed against the bill. Other Democrats in the state have railed against it. What are the biggest complaints, concerns that Republicans, again, say is fear-mongering?
Yeah, so Governor Pritzker, even though he hasn't had any events this week, either official or political, his official office has released statements almost every day this week highlighting what he says are threats to public funding for subsidizing healthcare through Medicaid or subsidizing food through Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. He claims that 500,000 people will be impacted by these things. And you've also got the governor, even in a statement he put out earlier this week, highlighting that school choice scholarship tax credit that the federal government enacted that will allow for people to donate to a school granting organization, scholarship granting organization, and get a 100% tax credit up to $1,700 for donating. Governor Pritzker, in a statement this week, warned that could mean fewer public dollars for public education, seeming to echo what the teachers unions have said. And that's another big element of this bill, Dan, alongside the no tax on tips. What is Illinois going to do about the federal tax credit for school choice granting organization donations? That's going to be a question in front of legislators, because they have to, from our understanding of reading the legislation, but also talking to school choice advocates, the state's going to have to opt into this, and the governor or the legislature or a governing body is going to have to approve the list of school scholarship granting organizations that can take these donations for that tax credit on your federal taxes. But the governor, again, seemed to echo what some of the teachers unions and their supporters say about this piece of legislation to allow for that tax credit. They say it's going to mean fewer public dollars going to public education. But when I talked with Jonathan Greenberg from Empower Illinois, he said that's just not true. He pointed to Illinois in particular and said the tens of billions of dollars that go to public education continues to increase each year, $350 million at least in Illinois, and that money's still going to go to public education. He highlights that the tax credit for the school choice scholarships, those are private dollars being invested into that to go to a private school. So that's another element here, Dan, that we'll continue to report on at thecentersquare.com as the long-lasting impacts of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act continue to unfold.
And while this federal tax credit program for school choice initiatives would benefit Illinois children, particularly lower income children, Greg, we already know that Governor Pritzker and the state legislature let the Invest in Kids Act, a very similar scholarship program where private individuals or corporations could donate to these scholarships, not taxpayer money. They let that sunset in 2023. It was put in place under former Republican Governor Bruce Rauner as sort of a negotiation tactic during the tough budget years of the Rauner years. But they let it sunset, appear to have no interest in renewing it. Haven't, of course, have had a couple legislative sessions to do that. So it seems like Illinois likely won't opt into this program.
With the way the governor characterized it in his statement this week, that seems unlikely. However, when the governor was asked about the Invest in Kids program before its sunset, he seemed to be open to the idea of having it continue, but he said that is in the hands of the legislature. But again, the statement this week indicates that it might be a tough battle to get that across the finish line. But there's going to be some time between now and when the federal tax credit program for school scholarships is fully enacted, because that's not going to be until calendar year 2027. So again, a story that we'll continue to see how that plays out here in the state of Illinois. Dan, tons of other things in that one big beautiful bill. I don't even know where to go next. Do we talk about energy?
That's what I was going to say.
About immigration? Do we talk about?
Let's go with energy first, Greg. To help pay for the extension of President Trump's first term Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Of course, that was set to sunset at the end of this year. Trump, that was one of his big campaign promises, that if he gets elected, he's going to make sure that's extended permanently. It is extended. So to pay for those future tax cuts, he wanted to find offsetting cost reductions. One of the things he's doing in this bill is scaling back tax incentives for green energy like wind and solar. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is a big point of contention here in Illinois with Governor J.B. Pritzker several years ago enacting legislation that essentially says coal-fired power plants, you got to shut down by either 2035 or 2040, depending on how you operate. And that signaled to coal-fired power plants to just stop investing in them because they have a short runway. No longer should they put millions of dollars into upkeep and so on. So it's really impacted the coal-fired power industry in the state of Illinois. And the governor, when he, of course, signed that legislation several years ago, put more of an emphasis on so-called renewable energy, the wind and solar, and giving subsidies and tax credits and crafting Illinois law to better foster investment into all of that. Well, President Donald Trump ran on saying that wind and solar are too expensive, and the only way that they're viable is if there's a lot of taxpayer subsidies involved. And he ran on that platform of bringing back natural resources, as he calls it, clean coal and natural gas. So he had an executive order when he came into office that essentially made that a priority, focusing on more, drill baby drill was a campaign slogan for the Trump campaign, more natural resource energy. So those executive orders were in effect, but having the legislation through the one big beautiful bill really kind of puts the rubber to the road in signaling where exactly investments are going to go. And Trump said this week, no to solar, no to wind. Governor J.B. Pritzker said the one big beautiful bill is going to increase utility costs for people because it's going to lead to fewer, as he says, important energy sources like wind and solar. Again, Illinois has put emphasis on that, putting public resources behind those efforts. But when Pritzker talks about the increased energy costs, he says costs are already increasing. And he does not say that that is because of his policies of essentially signaling to coal-fired power plants it's time to go offline while we don't have the wind and solar completely online. Pritzker blamed the utility grid managers. Illinois has two of them, MISO and PJM. He says that they have been unable to connect a lot of what he said were finished projects, wind and solar, to be able to plug into the overall grid. PJM back in May, after similar criticism, said that that's really not the case at all. And that's a mischaracterization of what they do as grid managers, saying that they predicted for years a over-reliance on unreliable energy that's not entirely capable of handling the base load is going to lead to higher costs. And that's where we find ourselves now. So a lot of finger pointing when it comes to how energy prices are going to be impacted by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, seeming to really steer away from wind and solar and so-called renewable energies as unreliable and focusing on the natural resources. Is that going to drive down the price eventually? Again, Dan, these are going to be ongoing issues because a lot of the criticism we've heard from Democrats that Republicans call fear-mongering is a lot of estimates and speculation. I mean, the rhetoric even heated up to Governor J.B. Pritzker last week saying that people will die. And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson this week calling the One Big Beautiful Bill unholy and sinful. So the rhetoric and the facts, so-called, that the Democrats are putting out there are a lot of speculation, saying that 12 million people are going to lose their health care coverage over 10 years. Well, that's, again, an estimate, and we'll see how this all plays out, but it has not calmed down the political rhetoric, Dan, as we rapidly approach the March primary election for the November 2026 general midterm elections. We're going to hear a lot more about the Big Beautiful Bill.
One more thing about the fear mongering, particularly over the health care. What the bill, because who knows how that's going to look a year or 2 years, 5 years from now, right? But one thing that Democrats don't say when they say millions of people are going to die is what the Medicaid reforms do in this bill. Is they do a few things. One of them is they they push eligibility requirements back to pre-COVID times. During COVID-19, during the pandemic, the federal government and states expanded Medicaid coverage, allowed previously ineligible people into the program. Of course, there were millions of layoffs across the country because governments, state governments, the federal government shut many things down at that point. So it scales back eligibility requirements back to pre-COVID-19 days. And it also requires adults, healthy adults of a certain age, to work 20 hours a week to be eligible for Medicaid. So some people's, it will kill millions. As other people's, these seems like smart reforms.
Yeah, and the Republicans say the fear-mongering isn't going to work when people realize that they're just merely asking for certain types of requirements. People getting these benefits need to follow, including work requirements if they're able. But ultimately, the bottom line that Republicans' response has been they need to make sure that the benefits are only going to those who actually need them. Given the amount of debt that the United States has, it's important to ensure that the social safety nets that there are in place aren't being abused with any kind of waste, fraud, or any other nefarious things, and that the resources are really there for those who need it the most.
So the program can remain viable for those who actually do need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One more thing about this, Greg, before we talk about the border war, or should I say the deportation immigration war between Illinois officials and the Trump administration, One more thing that Big Beautiful Bill does is it eases the estate tax burden for farmers, also known as like the death tax or the inheritance tax. Some lawmakers in Illinois have tried to reform the state's estate tax, but have been unsuccessful. What the Big Beautiful Bill should do, the concern over the estate taxes, particularly when it comes to family farms, is that when the patriarch or matriarch of a family farm dies, in order for their children to inherit that farm, they have to pay this huge amount of taxes. One Big Beautiful Bill eases that a bit. Is there anything going to happen in Illinois with that?
Yeah, there was a bipartisan push to essentially kind of do what the Big Beautiful Bill does, just increases the threshold of who would have to pay that estate tax. And I think the Big Beautiful Bill increased that threshold to like $15 million. In Illinois, the threshold's at $4 million. So if you have a family farm with a lot of property, it's going to add up. All that acreage is going to have a cost to it. And if it's more than $4 million and you're handing it off to your progeny, then they're going to have to find how to pay the tax on that. In Illinois, there was a bipartisan effort to increase that to $6 million instead of $4 million. So larger farms that are over $6 million, they would have to pay the estate tax. But those who supported the measure said the $4 million to $6 million threshold will really benefit a lot of family farms. That went nowhere. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he was asked about this during an ag event at the state fair, or not the state fair, at the state capitol during spring session. And he simply said he's open to the idea, but anybody who wants to offset the potential hundreds of millions of dollars of lost revenue from that change, meaning, Dan, the state's bringing in $200+ million in the estate tax from these types of transactions of somebody handing off property to their progeny. That's a lot of money. He says if lawmakers who want to bring a change to the estate tax can find a way to fill that loss of revenue, then he's open to it. But we haven't seen that conversation advance at all.
One last thing that the Big Beautiful Bill does, but related to Trump's border policies, is it increases border security funding by tens of billions of dollars. Of course, the Trump administration, Governor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson in Chicago have had a war of words in recent weeks and months over Trump's border policies, particularly his deportation efforts. That's continuing, and the Trump administration is not backing down.
No, not backing down at all. And even Tom Homan, the Trump administration's border czar, said good luck to those mayors and sanctuary jurisdictions that say they're not going to, allow ICE to do their job. He says that just means that ICE is going to be doubling and tripling up their efforts in sanctuary cities like Chicago, like New York, like LA, and elsewhere. And Homan said explicitly, if local authorities aren't going to hand over criminal illegal aliens from their jails to ICE, that just means ICE is going to be on the streets in a larger capacity. Not just going after that criminal illegal alien when they're released from, a sanctuary jurisdiction's jail. They're going to end up having what they call collateral detainees, people who are in the country illegally that weren't really on ICE's radar getting swept up in all of this. So he says that it's exactly what sanctuary cities don't want, but by not cooperating with federal immigration authorities to allow for a safe and orderly transfer from a county jail to ICE officials, then it's going to cause some issues. So we're watching that unfold, Dan, as Democratic leadership from Governor J.B. Pritzker down to Brandon Johnson and everywhere in between across the country really critical of ICE as you see threats increasing against ICE officials doing their job. So the war of words, I don't think is going to dissipate anytime soon over this very contentious issue. As again, you mentioned, the One Big Beautiful Bill increases Border Patrol spending and ICE spending for more personnel. Homan even saying that they may have to increase to 7,000 detainees and deportations a day just to make up for all of the individuals who came across the border illegally during the Biden administration. So a lot of effort's going to be put into this. A lot of tax dollars are going to be spent on it, and we're already seeing plenty of eyeballs and criticism to go around.
We've been calling it a war of words, which has mostly been here in Illinois and in Chicago. If ICE does step up its efforts in Chicago, do you think we could see the kind of confrontations we've been seeing in Los Angeles, in Portland, Oregon, in Seattle? You think we might be seeing that at some point in Chicago?
We saw a flash of it, Dan, before the chaos that erupted in LA. If you recall, this was a month and a half ago or so. There were some immigration enforcement actions happening in Chicago, and some protesters arrived, and you had Chicago police arrive to keep the peace amongst the protesters and to keep a safe distance away from the federal officers. Well, Dan, Chicago being a sanctuary city, they're investigating that. The city aldermen are demanding answers on how Chicago police may have cooperated with ICE there. But there was no severe property damage. I think there may have been an arrest or two in Chicago, but it did not turn into the chaos that we saw in LA just a few days after that. But it still highlights the conflict here when you've got increased political pressure and rhetoric driving a certain group to protest a federal operation following federal law to enforce immigration efforts, and the public peace that's in between those two. Who's to maintain that, right? And I think that kind of goes back to the debate and the court case as well about Trump's use of the National Guard in L.A. Could that possibly happen in Illinois, up in Chicago? We'll be watching closely. I mean, these are important issues, and they're impacting taxpayers, they're impacting public safety, and we'll keep that in focus here with the Center Square.
Listeners can keep up with all the stories we talked about and more at thecentersquare.com.